State collapse, often characterized as a swift and absolute dissolution of a sovereign nation, is typically marked by the rapid dissolution of state infrastructure. An incoming regime, commonly spearheaded by military forces, usually fails to accrue support from the civilian populace, who then resort to self-sufficiency at a local level. Outside, states exploit the chaos politically, providing refuge to fugitive dissidents and leading to the rise of an uncontrolled, informal economy that further hampers any attempts at reestablishment. Though categories such as failed state and fragile state have been criticized as nebulous and overly wide-ranging, foreign policy experts like Charles T. Call recommend a focus on the extreme instances of collapsed states. These are countries whose state apparatus disappears for an extended period of months between 1995 and 2005. Such countries included Somalia, the Soviet Union, Yugoslavia, and perhaps Afghanistan. Scholars have recently concentrated on pinpointing tangible aspects of state capacity, building upon the institutionalist approach pioneered by Max Weber. Defining state collapse as the inability to enact and uphold binding laws, monopolize violence, and collect taxes. Daniel Lambosh, Eva Johias, and Marcus Bayer identified 17 collapsed states from 1960 to 2007. Most of these were in sub-Saharan Africa, featuring armed revolts in Chad, Uganda, Liberia, Somalia, Angola, Zaire, Guinea, Bissau, Sierra Leone, and Congo-Kinshasa, plus the dissolution of the Soviet Union impacting Georgia, Bosnia, Herzegovina, and Tajikistan. Other state collapses enveloped Laos, following a U.S.-backed attack, Lebanon due to a full-scale civil war, and Afghanistan during a large-scale rebellion against the communist regime and Soviet intervention. In their 2020 article published in Global Change, Peace Security, Johias, Bayer, and Lambosh devise a model to explain the triggers of state collapse. According to them, a state collapse is facilitated by the armament and mobilization of opposition groups against government. Political transitions such as decolonization or regime change enable questioning of existing power structures. Protracted power skirmishes undermine institutions. Repression builds severe mistrust between rulers and citizens. Factionalism hinders consolidation of state policies. Disunity within the ruling elite erodes monopoly on violence, lawmaking, and taxation, and foreign interventions aid in destabilization. Let's discuss the topic of power, state collapse, and the potential transformative role of individuals within ideocratic systems. The USSR's Marxist revolution led to the downfall of several regimes in Eastern Europe and Africa concurrent with the Central Power. Japanese philosopher Hajime Tanabe unraveled how states function like religious figures, leading to their frequent falls and resurrections, highlighting their power to transcend death. A psychological viewpoint suggests that extreme fanatics may have a Masada complex, leading them towards violent suicidal resistance. Within totalitarian states or ideocratic systems, individuals may cultivate an authoritarian personality and a closed mind. Resistant to challenges, renowned psychologist Eric Fromm once proposed that a nation sharing the same faults and errors could entirely spiral into insanity, termed as folly. A millions, the consequence of tyranny is an inevitable breakdown, as oppressed populations react with apathy, disdain, and destructive hatred. Mark Blyth indicated the potential collapse of democracy if the electorate is perpetually discontented and lacks choice, resulting in a paradoxical preference for undemocratic options. The process of democratization in divided, destabilized countries, or in those endeavoring towards reform, may inadvertently hasten collapse. USSR and apartheid. Strick and South Africa exemplify how malevolent or tyrannical states unravel civil society's institutions using the example of Syed Barre's reign in Uganda. The trajectory from prophetic rule, autocracy to tyranny is traced it. John Kenneth Galbraith deplores the scant research on the nature of political power and opines that power often falls into hands with the most conviction and not necessarily intelligence. The concept of power should be viewed as an illusion. Much like a river flowing towards and away from its wielders, he cites Mahatma Gandhi as an example, a powerless man who unraveled the powerful British India. Martin White warns of the threatening concentrations of power prevalent in defeat-stricken countries during the two world wars. He perceives their assured self-implosion as manifestations of the Antichrist. From a political science perspective, ideocracies necessitate a charismatic leader, who the followers obey not out of faith in the leader's vision, but out of their need to escape their frustrating existence in precarious times. Such a leader may call for a fight to the finish. The similarities between Saddam Hussein, who also exhibited signs of a messiah complex, and Adolf Hitler are undeniable. Hussein thrived on the kind of fanatical devotion shown by millions of people who ardently yearn for Hitler's return, a longing which could potentially facilitate his comeback. Nicolae Ceausescu, another figure with strong messianic tendencies, is said to have lost his sanity as early as 1971 when he sought to replicate North Korea's totalitarian regime in Romania, bestowing upon himself positions of grandeur such as the king, the chosen one, and the savior. In sharp contrast, the absence of competent governance and the increasing inability to cater to the needs of the populace can lead to widespread dissatisfaction. Politics that are defensive in nature and governments that suppress protests through strict authoritarian measures can result in the state heading toward a path of self-destruction. This proved to be the case for Chad in 1980 and Ghana in 1981, both of which collapsed under the weight of their own systemic failures. When Tsar Nicholas I ascended to the throne at the tender age of 26, he was largely inexperienced in matters of governance. His ascendancy was fraught with challenges, from rival claimants to the throne such as Grand Duke Vladimir's son Cyril to liberals and revolutionaries who staunchly opposed his autocratic rule by 1916. The Tsar had succumbed to apathy, heavily controlled by the Tsarina and Rasputin, and symbolized a failing monarchy on brink of collapse. The downfall of the Soviet Union was an event that astounded political scientists who hadn't foreseen it nor have consensus on the causes. However, in retrospect, Leonid Fatuni ascribes the collapse to a variety of causes, including poverty, conflict, deindustrialization, among others. When a state is in turmoil, the military might impose authority via a coup d'état. Although some military regimes successfully navigate a sinking ship, others try to enforce their control through relentless force, often leading towards the void they've themselves created. This was the case with Uganda under Idi Amin's rule in 1979 and in Somalia in 1991. The people's belief or support towards an authority termed as legitimacy may fluctuate with time. Burdening the state with issues of civil rights, participation, and accountability can tarnish its legitimacy and jeopardize its stability. This was seen in Afghanistan in 2021 and in the USSR in 1991. For states struggling with grasping the concept of legitimacy or nationhood, the threat of collapse is significantly high. One notable example is the Frelimo government in Mozambique. Most post-colonial African states have experienced such collapses, for instance, Chad, Uganda, Ghana, Somalia, and Liberia. In conclusion, a state's collapse is often signified by its loss of political control. Neighboring states might capitalize on a crumbling state to further their own agendas or shelter separatist movements. The collapse of Afghanistan in 2021 occurred largely because the Taliban were offered refuge in Pakistan. Similarly, Idi Amin was ousted from Uganda following an invasion by Tanzanian forces aided by Ugandan exile. State collapse is significantly marked by the loss of territorial control. When societal components are not taken care of, they usually revolt against the central power and choose to rely on themselves. This can lead to civil wars, resulting to the state losing its sole right to violence, with formidable forces growing under warlords, paramilitary, or guerrilla units. A case in point is the 1990s disintegration of the Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia into 6 independent countries. Slovenia broke away peacefully, but the other republics, Croatia, Bosnia, and Kosovo, that was then part of Serbia, experienced devastating civil wars due to constrained social tensions manipulated by nationalist elites. In South Africa, the infamous apartheid system was put to an end through diplomatic negotiations between the National Party, African National Congress, and other political factions. The result was South Africa's maiden, non-racial election, majorly won by the African National Congress. As Robert Kaplan points out, misbegotten wars have the potential to completely disintegrate nations, especially in cases of national decline. Involvement in World War I, for instance, led to the ultimate fall of Ottoman Turkey, Austro-Hungarian Empire, and Russia in 1917. Unequivocal successions to the throne and monarchies can also result in complete authority breakdown. This was witnessed in the Wars of the Roses, which saw the conclusion of the Lancastrian dynasty in 1471 and the Yorkist Line in 1485. In the 1980s, Angola faced a state collapse directly attributed to external aid received from the USSR. This financial assistance led to the transformation of the governing elite into unliked figures. In other cases, impending state collapse may lead the ruling regime or opposition groups into actions aimed at reviving the public support. These efforts may require radical and heroic measures that may involve rethinking or modifying the ruling ideology sometimes. Even entirely new ideals have to be adopted. For instance, Poland's communist idiocracy failed in 1980, and acknowledging Lech Wałęsa's Solidarity trade union triggered a military coup and authoritarian military rule. In Yugoslavia, in the 1980s, the communist ideology was replaced by a nationalistic drive for a greater Serbia and anti-bureaucratic rebellion, supporting Slobodan Milosevic. Marina Ottaway examines the disintegration of various empires, such as those of Austro-Hungarian and Ottoman in 1918, British India in 1947, and the Soviet Union in 1991. The breakdown of South Africa's white supremacist regime in 1993, followed by the dissolution of Czechoslovakia and Yugoslavia, reveal the aftermaths of state failure. Failed attempts at reformation often lead to the long-term dysfunction of government, absence of public services, and unsecured national boundaries. Evident in states like Somalia, Yemen, and South Sudan, the consequential chaos often motivates elite factions to orchestrate mass killings amid resource shortages. These catastrophes have led to the creation of new nations like India and Pakistan in 1947, Syria, Iraq, Palestine from the remains of the Ottoman Empire, and Czechoslovakia, Hungary, and the Austrian Republic from the Austro-Hungarian Empire. This also includes East and West Germany post-Nazi regime and various new states, including Tajikistan, Moldova, Azerbaijan, and Georgia following USSR's downfall. Tragically, state collapse often precipitates humanitarian crises, triggering vast refugee movements, particularly in Africa, but also in regions like Bosnia and Haiti. Early examples involve the mass immigration of Germans from Poland and Russia during 1944, 1950, and the South African diaspora after the dismantling of apartheid. The modern expectation is to restore such failed states, maintaining territorial integrity and instating democratic governance with the aid of multilateral organizations and bilateral donors. This involves concrete measures including establishment of central political authority, border control, resource management, and the provision of public services against the adversities presented by warlords, extremists, and smugglers. The drafting of Japan's 1946 constitution under American guidance, which endowed the Allies with military oversight on Japan, is viewed as an example of such political rejuvenation. What are the consequences and reactions following a societal collapse? This includes formal and informal justice pursuits such as the Nuremberg Trials, Truth and Reconciliation Commission of South Africa, and the trials of Slobodan Milosevic and Saddam Hussein. A notable reaction in many nations after a societal collapse is denial, frequently linked to refusal to accept responsibility for atrocities committed, such as the Holocaust, the Wehrmacht crimes, and the denial of Armenian genocides. One central aspect highlighted is the acknowledgement of collective guilt, as demonstrated by Germany, particularly through media portrayals like the film Downfall. Furthermore, in the aftermath of South Africa's apartheid era, feelings of guilt were more often experienced by liberals than by conservatives. The narrative also delves into the fabrication of theories to justify collapses, exemplified by the creation of the Stabin, the back myth to account for the German Empire's fall in 1918. Moreover, the narrative explains how a significant societal collapse like that of the Ottoman Empire in 1918 has domino effects, leading to long-term issues as seen in today's Middle East. Lastly, the narrative acknowledges the influence of Hitler on shaping the post-war world, accrediting the establishment of the State of Israel, the end of European empires, Germany's division, and the shared dominance of the US and USSR to his actions.